Hi, hello, and welcome, or welcome back, I suppose. Remember when, in last week's video, I said that this week's review would be on a book that has mixed reviews? Well, turns out, mixed reviews was a comment made to me, not to be taken literally, but instead meant that this was very likely to be complete and utter wank. Needless to say, I've been cussing the friend out who showed me this book non-stop, because if I'm suffering, they can deal with the consequences. Today, we're looking at an, I guess, retelling of the Persephone and Hades stories with Twilight by, no, not that one, 50 Shades of, nope, not that one either, Neon Gods by Katie Robert. We'll be covering themes of sex, kink, and awful romance books, all the usual stuff, and also spoilers ahead. So, while this is billed as a retelling of the story of Persephone and Hades, I don't know enough about that story to be able to comment on its efficacy as being a retelling. I will simply be commenting on this story as a thing in and of itself, despite it being not only Greek myth fanfic, but I am also so certain this is 50 Shades fanfic. Could that be a side effect of 50 Shades being a fanfic of Twilight, which itself pulls from this myth? Sure, but as far as I can recall, the allusions to Persephone and Hades mostly shows itself in Midnight Sun rather than the original books, so I'm mostly sticking with my first theory that this is 50 Shades fanfic. But let's get on with our synopsis. Most of the mythical names that are in here don't really function in the way they do in the original myths. Also, Olympus here is an upper and lower city separated by the river Styx. There are 13 gods that work more like political titles or royal titles, 3 of those roles being handed down, the rest being appointed. The legacy roles there are that of Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades. However, Hades has been turned into somewhat of a mythical figure, with those in the upper city generally under the impression that when the last Hades was killed in a house fire, there wasn't another to take over the role. The woman who took the role of Demeter last has 4 daughters: Callisto, Psyche, Eurydice, and most importantly for us, Persephone. Now, these are all supposed to sort of function as they do in their original myths, but now interact with each other in different kinds of ways. They're somewhat just boiled down to fit certain personality types, if I'm honest, and yes, it also does get a little confusing that some figures, like the top 13, are just titles, but other people are just names that we know and also happen to fit the character type. Like, Aphrodite has a son called Eros. Did he get that name from his mother getting the Aphrodite role, or is it just coincidence that follows suit with the original mythology? We don't get answers for this, and why would we? We're told that, in her way, Demeter loves her daughters, but what she loves more than that is power and political influence. She figures that by offering up one of her daughters to Zeus, that will give her ultimate influence. Her daughter would become Hera, and sure, with that logic, the person who winds up marrying Hades should by right actually just become Persephone, but trying to actually think about the way that this functions is completely pointless. Anyhow, yeah, everyone's at a big bash and Persephone has it thrust upon her that, surprise, she's going to be marrying Zeus. Well, she's as happy about that as you'd imagine, especially with the added bonus that people are pretty certain that he's killed off at least one of his wives in the past. She manages to sneak out of the building and make her way across the city, but she is being chased by a couple of Zeus's men. She only has one choice: make her way across the bridge down to the lower city. There's a treaty in place that should keep her safe, and now at least, given that she entered of her own volition, meaning that Zeus cannot send anyone to retrieve her. She is exhausted and she's scuffed up, but she makes it to the other side of the bridge, where she half collapses in the arms of a mysterious man all dressed in black. It's Hades, who'd have thought? When they're back at his place and she's cleaned and rested up, they chat a little and eventually come to a deal. There is immediate sexual tension between the two of them, and it serves in both their interest to use this to their advantage. Don't be hiding what they're up to, and in her words, make her sort of tarnished, so Zeus won't see her as this sort of perfect virginal prize. Now, Hades isn't solely into vanilla activities and tends not to be with just his partner when in the act. He has a playroom that also acts as a stage for those with similar fantasies in terms of voyeurism and exhibitionism. What better way to make sure people know what's going on? They both get some fun out of it. He's willing to protect her, given his own misgivings towards Zeus, and they also get to cause some problems on purpose at the same time. And I want to start by addressing my theory that this is just 50 Shades fanfic with Greek myth plastered vaguely over the top. I am aware, as I said earlier, that this theory could just be a byproduct of the 50 Shades being a fanfiction of Twilight thing, which, yeah, it kind of took some inspiration from the myth, but there are signs here. And one in particular really did make my spidey senses tingle. As a start, this is clearly just fanfiction, or written by someone who reads nothing else. Regardless of who these characters may once have been before they were Persephone and Hades, it all just screams AO3. I'll give it a minuscule amount of credit and say it doesn't quite reach the depths of Wattpad, but even then. But the main reason why I started to go, is he Christian Grey, was when I picked up on just how reticent he is at first to remove his clothes, especially removing his top. And he also does not want Persephone to touch his chest regardless of whether he is clothed. This is a big part of 50 Shades, with Christian having had cigarette burns from an abusive stepfather as a child. Eventually he starts to soften to Anna and she can touch him, so yippee, his trauma's fixed. In Hades' case, his burns come from the house fire that killed his parents when he was a child, one that was set off by the current Zeus, hence the issues there. When Persephone does see and touch Hades' chest here, there isn't quite as much, oh baby, who hurt you, who did this to you, doe-eyed nonsense, but there is the whole, no, these are you and they're part of you and they show how strong you are, and ooh, and it is cringe. The soft, gentle type meeting the big, bad, broody boy dynamic isn't quite as egregious as it is in 50 Shades, but it's still not great. We'll get into that later, though, because, don't worry, it still sucks. Just in a different way. It mostly sucks. Anyway, like I said, we'll get onto that in a minute. Because that isn't the only sign of the origins of this for me. Another big one is Hermes. Hermes is a woman in this, and at first I just found her overly sort of quirky and annoying and in your face, but then something clicked. Oh, she's Christian's sister. She's Mia, the one who was very obviously Alice before that. I found Mia annoying, and frankly, even Book Alice is kind of overly pushy, and neither of them have any clue how to keep their thoughts as inside thoughts. With Hermes, it almost feels like we have a sort of parody of a parody, so I was just groaning whenever she was on the page. I never really understood the character type that appears a lot in these books, where it's just say everything out loud, even when it's clearly inappropriate, and yippee, I'm the most excited, and I have the most energy, even though it doesn't make sense, and I'm just best friends with everybody, even though I'm genuinely really fucking irritating. Hermes says shit oh my god, can we keep her, when she realizes that the two of them are connecting properly, and it's just Persephone is right there, and it's can you have a little bit of respect if you do want to keep her around? But the first instance when I went, is this, was when he says that, I nearly said Anna then, that Persephone is trying to top from the bottom, and I know that's in the 50 Shades trilogy. I swear it's in there more than once, and it annoys me there too, by the way, because in both cases, part of me is just ugh, weird phrase, I don't like it, but I need people who write books like this to really understand, especially if they're writing straight couples, to know that topping and domming are different, and bottoming and subbing are different. They are not interchangeable. You can be a top and a sub, you can be a bottom and a dom, you can be a top dom, you can be a bottom dom, but just because you are one of those things doesn't mean you're the other. And also, it's got very little to do with straight sex. Because unless you do have something say, pegging involved, or you both got dicks that you use, if you have a cis man and a trans woman, you both got dicks that you're using, sure, you could have a top and bottom dynamic there, but literally it while it can be a little bit more sort of control related when it comes to lesbian relationships, with gays, in terms of men, It literally just means who's putting his penis in the other one. That's it. That's all it means. There is no sub-dom dynamic with that. That is purely related to kink stuff. But sorry, that just annoys me, because it's like, keep the gay shit out of your straight books. Especially if you don't know what you're talking about. Also, just like, there is the fact that the playroom is called that. I did get a bit of spidey senses there, but that is sort of an innocuous enough phrase for what it is. Like, I can't imagine that it is that uncommon. It does, however, lead me into talking about the play aspect of this book, if you will. Robert understands what she's doing in this area rather well. I'm not an expert or anything, but there was nothing that made me want to crawl out of my skin, barring a couple of clumsy phrases here and there. The two of them having a subdom dynamic, with Persephone being the former, Hades being the latter, with Persephone taking on a brat role. First of all, of course she does. They all do in these books, but in Robert's defense, she actually knows that it isn't something that Persephone she doesn't always need to take on the brat role. Like, she is a submissive, and sometimes that means just being submissive to her partner. Sometimes it means arguing back in that bratty way. She actually understands how the dynamic tends to work. And yes, there is also an element of a lifestyle dynamic with them, like a 24/7 thing, but they don't go whole hog with it. It's more sort of little comments here and there from the two of them. Like, she doesn't have to call him sir when they're out in public, but sometimes she does so just in order to rile him up, playing again into that brat idea. And I'm glad this is the option she went down, because I'm glad this is the option she went with, because lifestyle stuff is genuinely really complex, and I feel like we all have better things to do than actually just sit there and go over the minutiae of the way that consent works in a dynamic like that, because that is another thing that Robert gets so right. It shouldn't have to be said, but I do actually have to bring up how refreshing it is that consent is taken very seriously in this book. Kink is often written about without having any knowledge about the way consent functions in that kind of play beyond they have safe words. Like, I'm going to be honest, people who are, for want of a better phrase, good at kink have the most strict rules when it comes to consent, more than your average Joe, because you have to. If you are, even for pleasure, going to hurt someone, let's say you're going to slap someone's ass, you want to make damn sure that they're not going to be upset with you afterwards. They're not going to say, well, you shouldn't have done that. You need to get strict permission to do a lot of the stuff you're doing in kink, because it's, and that's at like the sort of more vanilla end is like slapping someone's ass. There are some risky things that you can do in these sort of places, especially when it comes to the realms of consent. You have to make sure that everybody is willing to do what everybody wants to do. And here they do set up a safe word. It's pomegranate, of course it is. And if Persephone, has her mouth full, he gives her a way to tap out non-verbally. Every time they're about to do something rough, do something public, do something new, he checks in on her. He makes sure that it's what she wants and that she isn't just trying to please him or do this because she thinks she has to. While he is physically in control because he's taking on that dominant role, she is the one with all the power there. While I do genuinely believe that this was at the very least inspired by 50 Shades of Grey, it's clear that Robert actually did her due diligence in looking up how this stuff works. What they do together actually seems like fun for both of them. When he's rough, not only does Persephone actually get off on that, it doesn't feel like he's just taking out some pent-up aggression on her. We also have the time taken out to make sure that he's as comfortable as she is doing all of this, something that's often left out. Dominant characters are not only often portrayed as predatory, but their enjoyment and consent is often taken as a sort of given. And I think part of that is because dominant characters in books like this are often men, and that is not taken seriously for men. I don't want to get overly serious with this, but consent is often taken as a given with men so much. And in books like this, it was like, well, they must be horny beasts all the time. It's like, well, no, it's important that everybody's actually having fun and wants to do this. And again, it was genuinely refreshing to see the way that Robert took time and care with this aspect of the book. Yes, there is also aftercare too. It's not lingered on every time, but it's made clear that it's present and is something that functions for both of them, not just the submissive. Again, it is clear that Robert understands that this is a two-way dynamic, and that is refreshing. I know I've said that a bunch of times. Don't take a drink every time I say that word. But that isn't to say that I appreciated everything about the way but that's not to say that I appreciated everything about the way their dynamic functions. My biggest complaint is one I swear I've had before, in that he keeps fucking picking her up. I get it a few times. Ooh, I feel so light and taken care of. Aha, teehee. But it's so frequent. And yes, I know she injures her feet running to get to the bridge, but Jesus Christ, can you at least ask her more often than not? Can you stop just scooping her up like she's some helpless little kitten on the side of the road? And of course, Persephone eventually is like, well, I won't pretend I don't like it. Like, go. He's just worn you down. Wake up. And it also falls into the fact that there's a notable size difference between the two of them. Of course there is. He's big, bad and brooding, and she's the teensiest, weensiest little thing you ever did see. But her power comes from within. First of all, where are my schlocky romances where the size dynamic is little guy, big gal? Why is it always this way round? Second of all, please stop infantilizing grown-ass women. Obviously grown adults can be petite, but why do we always talk about small women in these books? Like, well, that. Listen, the whole good girl dynamic thing, fine, have at it. But don't then hit me with him saying that she's wearing panties like a good girl. Because that makes her sound like an infant who managed to get dressed all by herself in the morning. I also just felt really weird with the fact that there are multiple times where we're made aware that when she's stressed, she doesn't really eat enough, and while he does make sure that she eats, yes, in the weird controlling way that Christian Grey does, and I'm pretty sure that Edward does this with Bella as well. I can't quite remember that, but I know Christian does that with Anna, so, and also her name's Anna, there's a whole thing with that, but anyway, but where was I? Yeah, he makes her eat in a controlling way, but it all feels like glorifying her sort of smallness and thinness, and it's gross, man. Like, I don't know what else to tell you. You can make the size difference work in a book like this so easily, because she feels protected in the right moments, because he's bigger than her, you know, he's able to physically protect her, but then in other moments, in the bedroom, she can feel overpowered and not in control in the way that is, you know, fun. Just stop making her seem like a child, and stop emphasizing how little and tiny and thin and small she is. It makes your male romantic lead look like a nonce. And also, as a side note, while most of the sex scenes are written well, and I wasn't generally left feeling like I need to chuck up after, please never ever say that a man wedges two fingers inside her, please. Thank you. I don't. Like, me trying to get one last jumper in my drawer isn't what I want to be thinking of while reading a scene like that. Wedges is such a... Like, I'll give her the credit that I always give when writers do this, which is she uses anatomical terms, good for her, but wedges, jam it in. Oh, I made it worse for myself. No, it's and while their sexual dynamic didn't have the most consistent quality, at least Robert understood that the primary part of it is just that, it is sexual. I found that the romantic aspect fell a little flat, but it's clear that it isn't the main focus. Like, yeah, they realise they fall for each other, and it's fine. Could have been better, could have been worse, but we all know their main motivation. Their feelings also do take some time to develop, and the moment where they confess to one another, it feels earned enough, I guess. However, there is more to this story than what goes on in their bedroom, or at least that's what Robert wants you to think. It's like she wants to sprinkle in some politicking and world building, but is afraid to actually commit. Instead, we get endless reminders that if someone crosses the river Styx, it has to be of their own volition, and no gods, barring Hermes and Diana, and no gods, barring Hermes and Dionysus, can cross that border. If any of those rules are broken, then so is the treaty. And that treaty was formed after the fire that killed the last Hades, and that Hades was our current Hades' dad, and it was done by Zeus. And if that treaty's broken, it'll be all-out war. We are told this again and again and again and again and again, with little to nothing added each and every time we're told. And it's not just that there's a bunch of repetition going on, it's that this is one of those books where the author is afraid of consequences. You don't have to kill your darlings, but add some interest. Like, it's something I notice a lot in romantasy. It's like, if you want to do this whole world building and, like, create an actual fantasy world that also happens to have some smut in it, make some danger. Because most fantasy books, and that's what this is, have danger in them. You need consequences for that. Like, Demeter cuts off the food supplies to the lower city, but it's fine because they've prepared for this possibility. Who needs consequences? Hades breaks the treaty by crossing the bridge to save Eurydice from Zeus's men. That's meant to start a war, right? No, we find out that Demeter has basically been playing everyone, and she did love her daughters, really, and it was all part of her plan, and now she just needs Hades to make some public appearances, and she leads the way for him to take Zeus out. And Hades can't be an actual killer because that would make him bad, so a fight leads to Zeus falling out of a broken window, and it'll all be cleaned up again. And it'll all be cleaned up, so he, again, will face no consequences for his actions. Maybe he'll feel a bit guilty, but his sweet angel Persephone will make him all better. Like I say, it's just a huge problem with so much popular romance. Like, sure, we're seeing a lot more well-written sex scenes that don't mince their words, and there's care around consent, but the actual meat of the books suck. Like, there's no care about world building. The characters are deeply dislikable most of the time, and in no way are they ever unique. The way the god system works here has no clarity to it, and if you actually try to think about it in relation to the characters she's referring to, it doesn't work. And the characters she does work with that aren't just the gods also feel infuriating. Orpheus is referred to as an, and I quote, fuckboy. He's there to break Eurydice's heart so she ends up in the lower city. Orpheus, who in the myth sees his wife die by snakebite and tracks her down to the underworld just to bring her back. Orpheus, who, just wanting to be sure that his love is with him, turns around and winds up losing her forever. In what world do you turn him into a fuckboy? My hope is that, knowing this is the first part of a series, Robert later did a retelling of their story, and maybe she even tries to do it justice. Instead, it feels like she just had the names but no care for the relevance they might have if someone comes to this book with even a modicum of knowledge about the myths. I could not believe what she was telling me about Orpheus in this story because I knew what the myth was, even just a little bit. Like, if this book was a romantasy with its own characters, even if it is still supposed to be based on the Persephone myth, then that might work fine. But as it stands, it just falls apart if you dig in just a little bit to any of it, frankly. And listen, if all you want is some exhibitionism smut, go ahead. But you can also find that for free on any fanfiction website, and the quality might even be better. Go on Wattpad. You might even find some better quality stuff on there. But you'll still find porn. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I said at the beginning that I won't compare this to a Wattpad story, but it's just irritating. My main thing is just don't waste your money on actually purchasing a book like this. Go find it for free on AO3. Next week, we're wrapping up our little romantic sojourn with a book I saw, I want to say last year, maybe the year before, that being My Roommate is a Vampire. Can't remember who by. I'm pretty sure it's just a Raylo AU fanfic, so yippee. I am delighted. please just tell me some good romance books. I don't know. I want to read something nice about people in love that doesn't make me want to claw my eyes out. It can have smut in it, but that isn't my primary reading goal for books like this. Just these last 2 weeks have been awful, and next week's not going to be much better. So just give me something good. To keep up with what I'm doing, feel free to like, feel free to subscribe, and feel free to ring that notification bell, all the cringe shit I'm supposed to ask you to do in my videos. But most importantly, I hope you have a wonderful day, a wonderful night, a wonderful whenever you are watching this. Take good care of yourself. Right.